Okay, we're recording. Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Ed Park from Recharge Biomedical, and today we're going to be talking to the lovely Elaine. And first, we're going to do a little lecture. This will be a little brief one today. The first of three cases is AR. She's a good friend of mine. I met at an anti-aging conference. She's a 62-year-old Brazilian shaman, so that means she's trained in the arts of healing, and she lives in Melbourne with her husband now. When she came to visit her son a couple of years ago, she said she had this terrible jaw pain. She called it dental pain, and actually, what happened was 4 years prior, she was doing a procedure, and she was thinking, "Oh my God, that doctor is not really paying attention. He's looking at the assistant's torso or bosom." And sure enough, when she thought that, his hand slipped and he caused damage to her tongue and to her jaw, her mandible. The result of which was 4 years of chronic pain. It was so constant and severe that she had to distract herself by doing kickboxing. She became very physically healthy, but indeed the pain would never go away, and there's nothing, despite her healing arts and her knowledge of plant medicine, that she could do. So when she came to see me, I said to her, "Well, I've heard reports that this helps, so why don't we try it?" And so you can see in the picture above, this is where the inferior alveolar nerve comes out, branch of the facial nerve. And so we numbed the area, put a couple of billion exosomes in there, and sure enough, by the next day, the pain had gone away, and it remains gone more than a year later. It's kind of a remarkable thing. I liken this to having sort of a live wire, like a down power line. For some reason, that nerve was just chronically signaling, and nothing she could do would change that. It didn't wax, it didn't wane. And so that's kind of an amazing thing. And you could see in the cartoon to my left, there is the branch of the facial nerve, and then it comes down. Um, Actually, it's a branch of the trigeminal nerve, isn't it? That's cranial nerve 5, and it feeds the mandible. So she actually went to the extent of taking out several teeth, which sadly did not help. They were healthy teeth. The second case, also quite impressive, is what I would call a dead wire. Again, if you want to read about Antonia's case, go to blog number 7. If you want to read about RM's case, he's a 65-year-old man, terrible hand and foot numbness. He couldn't feel light touch at all. Everything else was preserved: the pain, the temperature, the pressure, stretch. So, what had happened, and you can read about this in blog 32, is that he was working on a remodel of one of his properties, and he used a Home Depot degreaser. And this got soaked in the water in his boots for a couple hours. So he was marinating in this stuff. And when he took off his boots later that night, he found out he had no sense of touch. So it's sort of like this picture of the person going up the escalator with cellophane. He couldn't feel any light touch sensation in his feet. Interesting enough, a couple of 4 weeks later, he was working with a power tool with his dominant hand, and the vibrations caused some kind of damage as well. In a similar way, light touch was lost. So why would that be? Well, we know that degreaser is hydrophobic, or it's fat soluble. So those things get stored in your body. That's why people have LSD flashbacks, because it gets stored in your fat. So things like vitamin A, D, E, and K, anything that gets stored in your fat can stick around for longer, as opposed to water soluble things. So my hypothesis is that he had some on board, and when he did the power tool stuff, he did the same kind of injury. So what is that injury? If we look at the cartoon above, we see that there's different color-coded things, and the chart to my left shows what they are. There are mechanoreceptors all over the body, in your tendons. They're called Golgi, doesn't matter, in the muscles, in the hairs. These things all tell us information. Also, in the skin, these green onions, if you will, are for deep pressure. The little red radishes, they're the Merkel's discs. Those are for low frequency vibrations, rumblings. The bulbous capsule is this bluish one. That's for stretching of the skin. And the free nerve endings that come right up into the dermal papillae are for pain and touch and temperature. So if you slice your finger with a knife, that's what's you're hitting those free nerve endings. That's probably what happened with Antonia. But the ones that probably got melted or destroyed were these Meissner corpuscles. So that's that yellow one to the left. That's a specialized organ for sensing light touch, and that was gone in RM. So was that gone because of the organ itself was melted or destroyed? Perhaps, but it could also be that it was demyelinated. So what does that mean? Myelin is a kind of a jelly fatty sheath. It insulates the electrical wiring of the nerve axon. So he probably, using the degreaser, degreased his own myelin. So he demyelinated those endings. So if he had stayed for another 2-3 hours, perhaps he would have done damage to the green, the blue, the purple, and the others. But those were able to survive and regenerate. Oh, and the punchline is that we gave him ultrasound guided injections. This means that I took my ultrasound, and with his wife watching, we were able to show her exactly where the nerves were in the feet and in the wrist. And we were able to show her that as we injected, the sheath around the nerve became filled with fluid. And that resulted in him calling the next morning and saying, "Hey, it's all almost, it's like 90% better." And I think to this day it's like 95% better a year later. Next, we have the lovely Elaine. She's 69 at the time, and she had a facial palsy. You want to read about her case, you'd go to Exosome blog 38. So she provided a picture before the treatment and after. It looks pretty okay, but you can definitely see on the right side of her face there's a lessening of the muscle, keeping the eye open and keeping the smile up. So 10 days after, she sent me this picture, and she was quite happy that there was a resolution. At the time, she said that she had had an emotional trauma 12 years prior, and that afterwards it kind of just was there. Some people report a flu-like or respiratory illness. Certainly, viruses can trigger a local nerve infection. So at the time, because it's my tendency not to just do one thing but try and fix everything, so we also injected her shoulder muscle, her trapezius, also paraspinal, and she had some in her lumbar for back pain. She had some scoliosis there. So we'll hear from her how that is. She says that the relative weakness on the right resolved rather quickly, and so we'll hear how it is now, a year later. I just want to remind you above that the diagram shows us that the the upper face has innervation from both sides, whereas the lower face only from one side of the brain. If a person is having a stroke, what you can see is that the top half is unaffected. So a good clinical exam is to have them smile or squint. If the top half is unaffected, they could be having a TIA or an evolving stroke. A very important distinguisher. If, however, the person has been affected on the top and the bottom, it means that the facial nerve is affected, not the brain. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about what nerves are. Nerves are electrical conduction vehicles. So in the cartoon with the purple and yellow, what we see is that the purple is where the nerve body is. That's where the the business, the machinery of it is, and that's where it gets the signals. It sends a signal electrically. It's literally an electrical signal down the wire, which is insulated by those myelin sheaths that you see, the yellow ones, and then it sends a signal to whoever's listening on the other end. And there could be one listener or many listeners. Those branches are called the axonal terminals, I guess. And so I want to remind you that nerves are electrical. They sense something, and because of mechanics and things that we don't want to get into, there's a channel, ion gradients, and a voltage is created, and a mechanical signal is sent down the wire, quite literally. So this reminds us of the modulation, demodulation, or the modem. Everyone talks about their modem or whatever, but if you remember back in the days, in the I guess it would have been the 90s when they invented those call-up modems, they would go bzz, bing, bing, bzz, bing, bing, like that. That's because they were modulating and demodulating. So our nerves in general are a modulation demodulation system. They take something like pressure or temperature, an analog signal, and they make it into electrical signal. It's sent to the brain. The brain understands in an analog way by which neurons are fired. Oh, this is hot in my finger, etc. So it literally is a way to translate analog signals, either that you sense into digital electrical signals, and then back into analog signals of brain mapping. So that's what's going on. And that's also represented on the far left there. The brain is in the middle. It's so self-centered, our brains all are. So they always say, well, it's afferent. Afferent means it goes towards something. So sensation goes towards that all self-important brain. Efferent means it effuses out, it goes out, It's the commands to the muscles and to the autonomic nervous system. That's the parasympathetic, sympathetic, flight or fight, or relax and digest. And then, although it's shown as two different sides in that spinal cord cutout cross section, really, when you talk about a peripheral nerve like Elaine's, we talk about the fact that the uplink and the downlink in that wire are bundled together. Okay, so the afferent sensory nerves from all those colorful corpuscles, yeah, it comes back through the dorsal root ganglia, and the efferent to tell you to, oh, stop, standing in the grease, or stop cutting that knife. It's your finger, dummy. That's all. It comes in the ventral side, but when they go out to the periphery, they're all bundled together, outgoing, incoming, same nerve. And what does that nerve look like? It looks like um, this cartoon. So at the finest level, you have one single electrical wire, which is insulated. And this, it's not yellow now, it's blue, but it's a fatty sheath to insulate the electrical current going down. There are bundles of these into a cluster, which is surrounded by an epineurium. That's a membrane surrounding that single nerve. So that might be the outgoing sensory nerve or whatever. Next to it might be the incoming, or the afferent. And so that single nerve grew as a fetus or an embryo together. And those things have their own blood supply, and that's what they look like. What they look like in real life, when I take my ultrasound, like for example with RM, we could find it quite easily. We put on the Doppler window, and the Doppler shows us Doppler shift. So a fast flow shift will be red. We put a window, we see the artery, and the artery, because of embryology, it grows with the nerve. So it's always a good cheat. You look for the artery, and nearby will be the nerve. And the nerve looks like this honeycomb. It's quite easy to spot, actually. It has a very typical uh, appearance, and you change the angle, you can see what we call anisotropy. It's very easy to spot the nerve, and it's even more gratifying when you get the needle right up against it and you inject into the sheath, and you can see that thing just blow up like a balloon. So that's kind of cool. Um, we talk about ordinary neuropathy, and we talk about ordinary regeneration. So what does that mean? Well, ordinarily, the nerves can get damaged just from getting old. But what does that entail? Getting old can be mechanical disruption, like bone spurs, or just wear and tear on the nerve sheaths. But usually, the nitty gritty of it is that they have vascular compromise. So people who are tall, who are diabetic, who have other vasculopathies, collagen vascular diseases, they have bad vessels, and the nerves die from that. Of course, you can also get direct neurotoxicity as well. So when we talked about tendons, we talked about the Bay Bridge cable, that colorful thing up there. Easier to repair a tendon because so much of the tendon is still there. You just rebuild bundles around it. Whereas with nerves, it's more like these rope bridges. Yeah, sure, a lot of the nerve is probably there unless you transected it. So there is a pathway, but it relies on something called Wallerian degeneration, which is illustrated above. So yes, nerves do regenerate, and this is how they do it. If you look at the injury, that's the cut or the damage or whatever, and I have patients that are doing this radio frequency nerve ablation. I think it's very scary, but what they're aiming to do is in picture B, they're aiming to destroy it, and by 36 to 48 hours, what's happening is um, cells are being recruited to dissolve that destroyed rope bridge. Okay, so they'll just destroy the axon, destroy the sheath. All that stuff is happening. So basically, Wallerian degeneration is what happens when there's nerve damage. The distal part of the nerve is dissolved, and hopefully it's reformed. Obviously, that procedure is not 100% every time. So uh, that's what we're talking about in this lecture. Okay, so how could it be? What happened? I'm just guessing this is translational medicine, but again, like I said, we had like a live wire situation with Antonia. It was sending signals, chronic pain, danger, Will Robinson. Somehow it must have been remyelinated or repaired. This could have been facilitated by dedifferentiation of the Schwann cells, the cells that make the myelin, also service the axonal repair in that Wallerian degeneration. Neovascularization is a prominent part of exosome effects, so new vessels could have come to help regenerate the area. Certain cells could have been in apoptotic final stages without going through that final stage of cell death. Another thing that comes up is inflammatory modulation. The macrophages could have been regenerative, or M2, from inflammatory M1. And then finally, central pain or central modulation, sensitization is an important thing. How your brain perceives something, it creates sort of this preset bias or prejudice. And so it could have been modulated in that way too. So we see kind of an illustration, two wires exposed. If you cover them with electrical tape, similar to remyelinating these destroyed or damaged organs, that could be how this is working. There is literature, not a lot, but there is some literature of using exosomes of various types to cure nerve damage. They do intentional injury to lab animals, etc. And so what we see here is one study from the journal Stem Cells, where they tried to argue that MIR133B was an important component for neurite outgrowth. So neurites are those outcroppings near the neuronal body. Over here on the left, that would be the dendrites, the receiving, the listening. And on the other side of the transmission wire are the axonal neurites. That's the sending. So if you give MIR133B, then it'll sprout like this beautiful avocado seed. You'll sprout a root and you'll sprout a sprout. What is MIR133B, you may ask? Well, if you go back to my first webinar on YouTube, I explained what interfering RNA is, microRNA. Basically, there's this entirely heretofore unknown and ignored field of medicine called gene silencing, which is not epigenetic in nature. In other words, we know about the gene silencing where you methylate a gene and it can't be turned on anymore. But this is on-the-fly, active, reversible deactivation. So a microRNA is a 22 base pair sequence. It's specifically designed to jam up a certain message. So the MIR133B 22 base pair matches pretty exactly with something it doesn't want you to translate. So long story short, if you have this, then you block a blocking and the thing starts sprouting. Obviously, we don't want this in normal situations, but in situations of special emergency or repair, we do want this. Very, very similarly, we have this other paper from the Journal of Neuroscience saying that microRNA 34A and 140 help Schwann cells to de-differentiate. So what does de-differentiate mean? Usually your Schwann cells are just happy-go-lucky, just keeping it going. But if you want them to go crazy and become replicative, reparative, grow more myelin. I mean, you don't want more myelin if everything's hunky-dory. But if it's not, you can become de-differentiated and gain a lot of potential that you lost. So it's like the Incredible Hulk. Bruce Banner can always be the Incredible Hulk. That potential is there. But if he's relaxed, he won't do it. So the argument here is that 34A and 140, they directly bind whatever protein it is that is keeping us from becoming the Incredible Hulk. So when you block the blocking of this reversion or de-differentiation, you get the Hulk. So that's how the magic of nerve regeneration takes place. These are a few of the keys. And I was talking to the chief scientist at Chimera Exosomes. He says, yeah, we do have at least 2 of these in our exosomes. So people will try and sell you a story saying that it's the proteins or the mRNA. It's actually the biggest, most interesting things are probably in the microRNA. It's the signals that you block that allow for these latent behaviors. In other words, your cells have the latent ability to become amazing, superhero, powerful, regenerative cells. But that's usually blocked because you don't want that, you don't need that, it's destructive. But in certain situations, they can be reactivated. All right, so what does all this mean? It's important in this political season. I always weigh all options and all opinions. I look for the facts, and so it's important to discern: is this all BS? Everyone lies. Some people don't know that they're lying. You could obviously take the stance that these patients are malingering, that the clinical findings they report are not real, that the treatment is not real, and that the results and changes are not real. I mean, that is possible, but I find it hard to believe that people would be so good at faking injury and lying and then paying money to have something and then be able to demonstrate the clinical signs and report change. It just seems like a lot of lying. uh, for not much benefit. So we have to remember that nerve regeneration is real. There's known science behind it. So the alternative hypothesis is that this stuff is helping to regenerate either by those microRNA or other proteins or other large scale cellular processes. We know that stem cells and Schwann cells, both our own mesenchymal stem cells and our Schwann cells, produce these exosomes, and this is how it's normally done. This is the normal process. So the rapid time course, however, argues that we had something like a live wire or a short circuit or a cut wire, and that somehow uh, these cells were in the process of trying to fix what they were trying to fix and never did the final steps. So even years later, with this permanent damage, somehow it was reversible. So it's very exciting stuff. And you have to think, well, what else in the world that we know of can cause nerve regeneration? And to this point, I don't think there really is much. Now, there might be some other things out there, some other latent superheroes. We might be talking about neural stem cell transplantation, but before we take those big steps in welcoming these new sheriffs into town, I think we should have a little faith in the normal process. So we're taking exosomes from a normal type of cell that regenerates and remodels, and we're giving it to people, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be able to work in us, as we see in these three cases. This will be the end. Next week, we'll talk about a few cases of stroke rehab, which are very, very exciting. Of course, if you talk about nerves, the assembly of the nerves is the brain, and what happens in a stroke is the brain is damaged. So we close with this quote by Walt Whitman: "I sing the body electric, I sing the body that is electric." The second half of it is interesting. You can't believe anything you read on the internet, so you have to cross-reference. I tried to find the second half. "I celebrate the self to be unveiled." Seems that a lot of people like making up quotes and attributing to famous people. There's a famous one attributed to Voltaire, which was made up by this guy with his own hidden agenda. You can't believe anything. Obviously, when it says Abraham Lincoln once said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet," it's more obvious. But this Walt Whitman, according to what I could find, did not say the second half of this. What he did say was, "I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me, as good, belongs to you." So this is from Song of Myself. The afore quote, the earlier quote is from Leaves of Grass. I think Walt Whitman was a very strange guy who was channeling a lot of transcendental stuff, and I think he was kind of maybe talking about exosomes. And what he's saying in this quote is that every atom belonging to me, like from that newborn baby that gave us the exosomes, and it's good, it can also belong to you. So when we take these exosomes, in fact, we are sharing in this common language of regeneration, and it creates a new repair, remyelination, and a restoration of the electrical integrity of our system. So let's go ahead and talk to Elaine. Hey, how you doing?
The eye is open big all the time.
Oh, so lovely. Good for you.
It's been a real, it's been wonderful to be able to keep the eye open without having to, you know, carry it around, push it around.
Yeah.
But it gradually has taken on its own space again. It's like saying, okay, get out of my way. I need this space.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty spectacular, actually.
It's amazing. And it happened how quickly? I mean, it was pretty immediate, wasn't it?
Well, when we first did it, it opened and hung open. That was the issue for for a few hours, and then typically it would go back down and hang. It would close up, and then it come back, and it would come and go. And over time, I've noticed that it continuously now it just opens in the morning and like a normal eye. Yeah, it's been really pretty amazing. But I wanted to ask you a question. When you find when we first did this was just a conversation back and forth between us about what would work and what would not work. And yet what happened here was that as much an act of faith as it was an act of science. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's an act of faith for sure. Because I have to trust that other people saying they've had good results is true. Um, there was another lady here in Hawaii who didn't have that much change. I just retreated her, and to be honest with you, it hasn't really changed that much. So could be a different mechanism. So I can't sit here and say there's a 50% chance it'll work. Everyone is different. So yeah, it is an act of faith, which is why it's important that people be skeptical. But I'm just glad that you and I had a relationship. You knew that I was not going to, misrepresent something. So you took that leap of faith with me.
I think that's exactly what happens because there are things going on now that I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the number of times I just came home from having had an adjustment, a chiropractic adjustment, and my face was blistered red all over here. And and the reason that's important is that I was committed to a very similar thing with this chiropractor who says your atlas needs to be straight.
Mm,
That helps. And and I hadn't gone in 7 months, and I went, and all of a sudden, bloom, blossom. A lot of the stuff that was bothering me um, was healed. I'm not going to say healed, but it was fixed. And it was so interesting because I had that similar feeling. It was ironic that this was on the same day
mm,
when I had the when you did the exosomes to the eye.
mm.
All of a sudden, I said, "No, I believe in this. I believe it's possible. I believe it's what I need." And sure enough, within 5 days, I walked away and I said, "Look, it's there."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. The placebo effect is real. I mean, it's
I think it is.
But then a lot of times, just having faith is not enough. I have a gal here in Hawaii. She's gotten two treatments because she believes in the exosomes. Um, and, she had tried, I think, 18 to 20 different modalities, different, like things I had never even heard of, like Reiki, Feldenkrais, this kind of breathing, that kind of yoga. So it's important to believe in the power of healing and all that. But, there's also biochemistry involved. When you believe something's going to help, somehow you have to change your biochemistry, your electrical signal, or God knows, I don't know. So it's not faith alone without works is not enough. It
No,
needs
you
to
have to
actually,
step up and you have to step to the front of the line and you have to say, "I want to do this,
yeah,
and I want to participate." And as my husband would say, "I'm all in."
yeah.
And I think that's part of what happened.
Yeah, you're right. And it's about alignment. It's like Antonia, I remember she did some magical faith healing on me in terms of shamanistic energy work. And, I say that with a very snide tone in my voice, but I don't actually believe in that stuff. But if it works, it works, So it made a real quantitative change in me. And she did it without insight oriented thinking or any specific breath work or stretching. So I think there are people that are able to see and move energy. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is because she said, I didn't heal you. If you say that, I will sue you. And I said, what do you mean you didn't? But what she meant to say, and it's a very profound point, is that you have to heal yourself. Your molecules, your cells, your signaling, your pathways, your organs, your belief, your body, your organism, your energy field, it all has to align to heal itself. So, even though she's a shaman, she couldn't heal herself without the help of this biochemical, whatever it was. So, it's not just faith that heals you. It's everything. It's the biochemistry, it's the belief, it's the alignment. But you have to have that mechanism there. Without that, it doesn't work. So what she's saying is you have the materials to heal yourself, but some guru on the internet or somebody preaching this methodology, that may not be enough. That your cells might need a little help biochemically to make those 2x4s into a beautiful frame house. So
Right.
like you said,
Right.
she didn't heal me, I didn't heal you, you healed yourself. But you need those exosomes because somehow you needed to connect the
There's
pieces.
something you were calling to you to help you get the job done.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
need the screws and the nuts and the whatever, the saws and all that stuff. We're a long ways away from understanding how any of these RNAs, DNAs work. It's really quite amazing. So whether it had an effect on you, I don't know, but your eye and your mouth does look much better. So I'm happy
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
This side of my face has softened a lot.
Hmm.
It's not nearly as tight as it was, and the eyes, the eye area. What I kept feeling was this heaviness around here. It was very tight, very very tight, and little by little, it has really loosened up. And I'm saying that this may not be as fast as people want, because if you look at it now, you can even see a difference from the other, the other picture. And then you look at it and you kind of go, well, this is now open. This area has stretched out. This has dropped a little bit, which is good. And now the mouth looks even across here.
Yeah. So for you, was it trouble keeping the eye moist, or was it like
No, no, no,
sensation was decreased or anything like that? Or
no. I never had a dry eye with the original experience.
Hmm.
What I did have was trouble keeping it. I couldn't keep it open.
Hmm.
And so I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know. And that's one of the reasons I came to talk to you originally, was how
Had
do
you
I
tried Botox before, Elaine?
not, well, yes, but not for this area.
Right. Yeah. I don't think it would help, but
I,
sometimes people.
yeah, that was having to keep this down instead of keeping it up.
Yeah.
And the problem with Botox, once you begin to mess around with it, then you have to hope you have a really top-notch, absolute top-notch person, because the face will move. You're suddenly you're this is up here and this is down here and this is here.
That's right.
So you always are conscious of whether, okay, so exactly where is my eyebrow right now?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend Botox to anyone for this condition. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
steering into a skid on ice. It's not a good idea. But anyway, so good. Thank you for trusting, and I'm just so happy it worked for you. And it's good stuff. Thanks for being on. You look lovely.
We'll be back to see you when you get back to the mainland.
I was briefly considering moving to Texas, but no one sold me on that yet. But you're out in West Texas, right?
We're out where you would be with your type. People who are independent, people who are self-motivators. In fact, the woman that does this, she has a spiritual based business.
Uh-huh.
She probably sells as much Botox, no, excuse me, Botox, as much stem cells as anybody I know.
Oh wow.
He sells
Well,
them.
I try not to be too salesy, but yeah, next week I'm going out to Miami. I might be moving to Miami soon, so we'll see next year.
Really?
Yeah, but my patient was trying to tell me to go to Dallas, move to Big D, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that. But I think it might be time to get the heck out of California. It's really degenerating.
When you're ready, if you would like to do, I'd love to help you do this.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you talk to her. She's quite a powerful human being, and she knows her products, and she's done a lot of sales, and they have quite a caseload all around the country,
All right.
for which there's a huge market.
Okay. Well, yeah. My kind of sweet spot, I thought, because I'm fluent in Spanish, was to go where all the Latin American expats are. Maybe I can help to heal some older people, trade some money for time for them. We'll see.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't realize you're fluent in Spanish.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah. And Yiddish. So.
está bien. Está muy bien.
Okay, te agradezco, Elaine. Thank you very much.
Okay,
So
my pleasure.
nice to see you. Say hi to Rick. So no one must have been happier than Rick, right?
He was most thrilled for me,
Yeah.
because he has seen the soreness and the hurt and the problems that come up with
Yeah.
this kind of situation. And he is 100% whatever it takes to get it done, let's do it. If I'm
Yeah.
willing to try it. It's sort of like Mikey. He says, Elaine, if you'll try it, I'll try it down the road.
He likes it. Hey, Mikey. All right. Well, that's life. All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you, doctor.
much.
Enjoy the
Nice to see
conversation.
you. Okay.
Nice
Bye
to see you.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Next week, we'll be doing stroke rehab. Hope you can join us.